Morning, everybody. Michelle is here for another episode of whatever. It's June 17th, 2026 on a Wednesday. And so I hope everybody's doing fantastic, magnificently, and marvelous. Because I am. I'm doing good. I did not sleep well. I have 3 beds that I'm testing out to see which one will provide me with the best, the best support and comfort. And last night, this particular bed I'm sleeping on, at first it was good. It provided me with some comfort, and I thought it was the right amount of firmness. And it turned out that it's not as good as I expected it to be over the long term. And that's the metaphor I wanted to start with this morning. Some people have their resumes look fantastic. Okay? Their backgrounds look structured and wholesome, so to speak. Whereas there's no one, when you call the recommendations for these people, there's nothing about them that stands out per se. They went to high school. They say they graduated from high school, and some say they graduated from college, or they graduated from here, they graduated from there. They have this paper to support, that they are qualified to do a job. And what usually happens is, just like a lot of people, they'll start out fantastic. They'll come in on time. They'll appear to understand their responsibilities and accountabilities for a particular position. And for the first 2 or 3 months, you have no issues with their work. Everything appears to be in order. But you start picking up inconsistencies, but you're not sure, okay, where these inconsistencies actually are developing. Where are they coming from? What's really going on? And this particular, let's just say someone in particular, you go back to their qualifications for doing this and that and the other, and it says they're qualified because they got a certificate, they have a diploma, they have this and that and the other, which ought to support that they are qualified for this particular position and others out there. They know how to walk. They know how to masquerade. How about that? They're great at masquerading. So you chose them. You're sitting there. You are the one that hired this person, and you're sitting there thinking, "Wow, this is not what I expected from with this type of certificate, and you recognize that this person has no life experiences at all. They're great at performing. They put out great resumes. They put out great performances when you are interviewing them. They're saying all the right words. They come from a wholesome family. They've never been in trouble with the law. And it goes on and on and on. And so you started monitoring their work because you felt like something was off. You weren't sure what. And so you go back and revisit what this so-called qualified employee had done, and you realize this person has no idea actually what they're doing. They're following instructions in a manual. Okay? Stay with me and understand what I'm saying. Yes, there are policies and procedures in a manual. A manual will tell you to start here and get to there. That's in some cases it's written, sometimes it's in photograph, or in some cases it's just written, no visuals, And so what you realize is that you've hired somebody who looks good on paper, but their job qualifications is anything but qualified. They are dry like toast. They have no butter. Metaphor. In other words, they go straight by. They just go by what it says in the manual, and that's enough for them. Okay, but anyone that thinks critically realizes, okay, there's more to performance. Oh, I hate that word. There's more to completing an assignment. Let's put it that way. There's more to completing an assignment and making sure you dot the I's and cross the T's, so to speak. In other words, you see past the manual and you can go deeper if there's an issue that you need to resolve. Okay, the manual is not going to always tell you how to do things. That requires thinking. So a lot of employers are realizing that they're hiring these unqualified, wet behind the ears employees that have no idea how to look outside a manual. They figure, okay, well, this is, this is what it says in the manual. This is what it looks like. Okay, my job is complete. But you say to them, okay, there's a problem here, however, and they are unable to look deeply within their job description to figure out, okay, what is not necessarily in the manual, but requires logical, rational, and reasonable thinking in order to figure out, okay, why is this not running properly? Why is this not working properly? I was listening to something on, I can't remember where I saw it. I'm not sure, on the social media platform, where there were these guys there, these males. They looked like Ivy League, because of how they were dressed and their hair, the way their hair was cut. They appear to be recent college graduates. Okay, they had that cold look. There's a cold look, not just a cold name that they look for. They have that wholesome, what's that? It's a coded word that gives the illusion that they come from a good background. They're wholesome. It's wholesome. What's the other word? Wholesome is coded to mean a particular standard of person. Let me find something else. All I'm saying here is that so many employers are realizing that it requires more than wholesomeness. I'm sweating because I'm waiting for someone, and so I just gotta sit in my vehicle while I wait for someone. Wholesome, good values, wholesome. Let's see. Clean cut. That's another one. Wholesome. They're promoting social or moral well-being. Okay, favoritism. You know what I mean? So a lot of employers are realizing, and I want to stress because they're hiring these wholesome looking pedigree of these clean cut so-called males. I can remember, like I said, I was watching a video of these clean cut, wholesome well-dressed males. They were white, okay, and they were being interrogated, I guess, or in a deposition about something relating to, their job performance and how they were able to, how they conducted their job. In other words, they were asked, "What is your job description?" And the only thing that these males could say is, whatever is in the manual, basically, is what I followed. Okay? So if there was a problem or an issue, this person, whoever was interviewing them or in a deposition, they would go back to what was in the policies and procedures. Okay. Now, in my former position as a first responder, they are heavily into policies and procedures. Okay, which is that can be understood, but the life and the reality of a first responder is not policies and procedures. What I'm saying, you cannot just keep be robotic and say, well, if it's not in the policies and procedures, then it's da 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 da. So in other words, people are these particular type of pedigree of people cannot think outside the box. They have to think policy, procedure, policy. That was drilled into our heads. It's an indoctrination, by the way, because because when it comes to policies and procedures, that's just a blueprint. Okay, policies and procedures are blueprints. Okay, sometimes the formula works and sometimes it doesn't. How can you figure out why the formula is not working? Thus, here we are facing each other on this June 17, 2026 of a Wednesday. Okay, we still have they call themselves grown-ass men who are following something that was supposedly written in the 1700s. And they are doing everything in their power to convince billions of us that those policies and procedures are followed today, which they're not. They're not followed by them, but we are required to follow these age-old, almost 200, 300-year-old policies and procedures, forgetting about how we've advanced somewhat, which we have not. We have not advanced in our consciousness at all, and that's the devastation that we're facing. Okay, we have so-called policies and procedures, so-called written by our founding fathers in the 1700s, when almost 90% of that population could not read or write, and yet we're still following 1700 standards in 2026. And we have these robotic potential category of people who are supposed to take over, so to speak, meaning they're supposed to fill in these positions that are opening to help advance our civilization. We're in the industrial age. In the 1700s was not an industrial age. So I know whoever is listening understand what I'm attempting to relay to you. Okay, I know there's some people listening to me that are my adversaries. I know that. Okay, they look for reasons to criticize. They look for reasons for this or that and the other. But the main thing is they look for how to contradict what I say. And in most cases, there's a lot of jealousy and envy, and not to mention criminal negative energy, which is jealousy and envy. Okay. I'm doing everything I can because I'm doing it because I want to help. Okay. But some people like the status quo. They like it that people are not thinking for themselves. They like it that people follow policy. And what they used to say as a first responder, if it's not in the policies and procedures, then, you violated da 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 da. It's a violation per se. And a lot of the ones that are, hammering down on policies and procedures and manuals that were written in possibly in the 60s, 50s, 30s, for all we know, have not read those policies and procedures themselves. They use those policies and procedures as a reason to fire people, and they use it as a reason for not hiring people. Okay? We know that there's a code out there for people with their names. Got little flying visitors coming in here because I got my window cracked. If you have a certain sounding name, you will not be hired for a position. So now they have a coded language, whereas what college you went to, they have coded languages as to what neighborhoods you come from. Everything is known about you. Your demographics is on public display, actually. Okay? And so what a lot of employees have done is they thought they were hiring wholesome, so-called intellectual, usually biological white males. And they were hoping these biological white males would take over and run the company. A lot of parents have realized that was a fatality to believe that. That their pedigree, their descendants, their children are going to be taking over and running the country, so to speak. A lot of parents are at their wits' end because they know that would be a catastrophic mistake. So I say all of this to those of you that are in these so-called positions of hiring people. Okay, I'm going to say this about myself. I remember when I applied for a position. I was I think I was 19. I just came off of a job at a fast food restaurant. And I don't know what got over me, but something told me I want to go work here. And it was a professional environment. Well, let's just say it was banking. Okay? And I had no experience at all. I graduated from high school. I just finished, I think I was in college, in a junior college and blah, blah, blah. I had no experience at all. I had no experience with dealing with money, no experience with having to dress professionally, meaning wearing these professional attire. No idea. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, I remember the person that hired me, and I think they may have said to me, I'm going to give you an opportunity. They knew I wasn't qualified, but they gave me an opportunity. They didn't care that I didn't finish college because I was still in college at that time. And the rest was history. I turned out to be a high quality performing employee. And I was with that job for 12 years. And for 12 years, I did not miss one day of work. Do the math. I'm going to go ahead and stop right now because I do have things to do. But I'm going to come back to this. And like I said, to the employers out there, you're going to have to reconsider what you're hiring. And get out of this indoctrination about these coded things you do, which are denying other people opportunities. Sticking with the status quo. And being a coward behind policies and procedures when those policies and procedures are irrelevant and in some cases wrong and dangerous. Peace and love. And trust me, I will be back.